Santelli has the Santelli Exchange. Hi, Rick.
Hi, and thank you, Mike. I'd like to welcome my special guest, Representative and House Judiciary Committee Chairman Bob Goodlatte. Chairman, thank you for taking the time this morning.
It's good to be with you, Rick, and your viewers.
Thank you. Listen, being in the markets, after the credit crisis, of course, there have been billions of dollars of fines that have been collected. In many cases, no wrongdoing has been admitted. Trying to follow those funds has been complicated. Many periodicals and websites have tried. You, sir, are sponsoring H.R. 5063, and it has a pretty forceful title. It's called Stop Settlement Slush Fund Act. Wow, that's pretty intense. Why don't you tell us about H.R. 5063?
Sure. Well, as you noted, a number of people and businesses that are sued civilly or have criminal actions brought against them and settle for fines or payments see that money not going to victims who are directly harmed by whatever action they may have taken, and not going into the U.S. Treasury, as it's supposed to if it's not going to victims. Instead, it's going to left-leaning organizations like La Raza or the National Urban League or Neighborhood Works, favored organizations of this administration, to spend on things that they actually go to the Justice Department and propose and say, hey, why don't you get some of the money from this settlement and give it to us? That is exactly what the United States Constitution says the Congress is supposed to do, and that's why we are very concerned. This is a runaround. It's all a part of the president's, I'm going to take my pen and my cell phone and do things myself, and one of the things you got to do is fund the things he wants to do. That's what's being done here. It's wrong. It's inappropriate. It's not historically what lawsuits are supposed to be about, and therefore we're putting a stop to it with this legislation, which will be on the floor today.
Now, Chairman, let me stop you here. Now, let's strip this of politics. So whether the money is going to left, center, or right doesn't change the dynamics of the issue at the epicenter here. So the Department of Justice must figure into this process somewhere. And when you look at what's going on in front of the presidential elections, whether it's questions about the Clinton Foundation, whether it's donations by Donald Trump, money moving to organizations is a big deal. How did this occur, and why is the Department of Justice not more forthright about the destination of these monies?
Well, that's a great question, and we think the answer is that these organizations went to them and said, we want you to divert some of the money from these huge, in many cases, multi-billion-dollar fines and settlements that are being paid by Citibank, by Bank of America, by Goldman Sachs, by J.P. Morgan. We want some of that money. And not only
how much are we talking, Chairman? Can you put a number on this?
Absolutely. It's over $1 billion. Just those four financial institutions that I just referenced are in the $900 million neighborhood of money not going to the Treasury and not going to the victims, going to other parties who were not harmed by the actions that these institutions allegedly undertook. And so they're bypassing Article 1 of the Constitution, which says money that belongs to the federal government is appropriated by the Congress.
Chairman, let me stop you again. I constantly hear both candidates talk about infrastructure spending. I constantly hear all the people I interact with, both at work and at home, that it sounds like a great idea, but a lot of that money up in, quote-unquote, a slush fund type environment or just in the general coffers. This seems like a similar issue. Now let me take it to the next step. What is your bill doing right now? In other words, what's the progress of H.R. 5063?
Well, we've investigated this matter for close to 2 years now. Even with that, even with the attention that's been focused on it, the Justice Department has doubled down and just at the end of August did it again with regard to the Bank of America to the tune of another $490 million. So what the bill does, and it passed out of the Judiciary Committee with a bipartisan vote, it passed through the Rules Committee, and now it is headed to the floor of the House this afternoon. What it does is it simply says that money from settlements that the Justice Department orchestrates must either go directly to victims or to the U.S. Treasury. And if it goes to the U.S. Treasury, then the people's representatives, the people's money, their elected representatives are the ones who should make the decision about how to spend it, not bureaucrats or prosecutors in the Justice Department.
Now, let me interrupt you again, sir. My question is, it almost seems to me kind of superfluous that you need to have H.R. 5063. If this goes against the rule book, as you pointed out, why can't you just freeze those funds?
Well, here's what happens. The prosecutors are holding over the heads of the executives of companies like the ones we just referenced threats of being charged with felonies. And they're saying, unless you enter into a settlement, we're going to prosecute you under certain circumstances. And if you don't want to have that prosecution, then we'll settle it and we'll go together to the judge and say, hey, we've got a great idea on how to settle this case, and here's how we're going to allocate the money.
Chairman, if you can prove that, there's a lot more at stake here than just moving the money. That's some malfeasance involved there. Listen, Chairman, we are out of time, but I want you to promise me you'll come back as this weaves through. And real quickly, how's the Senate with regard to this bill? Are they going to be amiable to the dynamics of what you're trying to accomplish?
There's a lot of interest in it in the United States Senate. James Lankford from Oklahoma is carrying the bill in the Senate, so we're very happy about that. But we think it needs a big push, a bipartisan push out of the House of Representatives to protect the people's rights under our Constitution.
Chairman, thank you for taking the time today. Very interesting and a bit depressing, I must admit.